Hi everyone, so this week's topic is the global burden of mental illness, and Dr. Sheila Harms facilitated our class today and really encouraged some interesting discussion that I'll talk about. We started off by talking about the global burden of disease study published in the Lancet in 2010. This is just a short clip that summarizes a few of its findings.
This study shows 183.9 million deaths worldwide for mental and substance use disorders. This includes 8.6 million years of life lost and 175.3 million years lived with disability. The highest proportion of DALYs occurred to those aged 10 to 29. Depressive disorders had the highest proportion of total burden across all regions, followed by anxiety and drug and alcohol disorders. The GBD 2010 results for 1990 and 2010 show the total burden of mental and substance use disorders increased from 133.6 million DALYs in 1990 to 183.9 million, a rise of 37.6%.
So as you can see, mental health is a really important target for intervention, and I think it's really gained momentum in terms of policy and attention on a global scale. We also talked about the Millennium Development Goals in order to talk about some of the progress that's been made. I think we've fallen short in a number of these goals, but one of my classmates raised a really interesting point that I had not previously considered. He said that although we may not have met the explicit goals that were set, perhaps the implicit goal was to bring these issues to the forefront of policymakers' attention. I think this is really innovative and really a smart way for the UN to place numerous issues on the policy agenda on a global scale. So it'll be really interesting to see how the forthcoming Sustainable Development Goals will shape where resources are allocated in the future. Next, we focus specifically on issues of mental health around the world. Dr. Harms read us a case study about a young girl who was being beaten by her father because she was spending a lot of time at an orphanage for AIDS orphans. The girl was experiencing fainting spells, where she would pass out seemingly at random. Her mother brought her in to see a psychiatrist, who recommended she listen to her father, and suggested that her fainting spells were, in fact, under her control. That is, there was not an underlying pathology explaining her fainting. We then discussed what struck us about this case, and I was really challenged to consider the importance of culture. Though not without stigma here, the stigmatization of HIV/AIDS is a lot more pervasive and far more detrimental in sub-Saharan Africa. Not to justify his actions, which I think are inexcusable, but I did not consider the cultural nuances that could have influenced the father's actions. For example, his job is likely the only thing sustaining his family financially, and the stigma around HIV/AIDS is so pervasive that his daughter's actions could have caused him to lose his job, which would be devastating for the entire family. The prompt also suggested that the father had a drinking problem. In Canada, I think we're really quick to demonize addicts, making the father in this case out to be the bad guy. We like to categorize people into victims and abusers. While in this case it might be a lot more complex than that. The father himself may be suffering from alcohol abuse problems, which he is unable to control with the limited supports available outside of Kampala. Another interesting point raised by Dr. Harms is that nobody brought up the lack of mention of consultations with a witch doctor, which is an extremely common practice in Uganda. These witch doctors have been practicing for thousands of years, making Western medicine a relatively new practice. That said, I think in general, physicians don't really know how to work alongside with traditional witch doctors. Moving forward, I think there needs to be increased awareness of witch doctor practices and collaboration between traditional practices and Western medicine. So that's all I have time for this week. That's the end of our semester. I hope that, like me, you are beginning to understand the complexities involved in tackling issues in global health. Thanks a lot to Drs. Hunter, O'Shea, and Craker for a great semester.